Okay, if you don't have the notification, it says this meeting is being live streamed. So I hope everyone is on board. I'm just trying to.
You're good to go.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Make sure that trying to do multiple things here, multitask. Sorry. So welcome. We've been doing this for a year, but we've only done it 4 or 5 times. So for whatever reason, this time it did not work exactly correctly. I'm thrilled to see your faces, and I wish we had more time where everybody could introduce themselves, but we don't. So I'm just going to kind of rush into sharing my screen and going through the PowerPoint presentation I sent you a copy of. So let me pull that up real quick. So hopefully you can see everything on my screen. And this is, sorry, a little bit difficult. Sorry, I feel like I can't see everyone, and I know you can't see my screen, but well, can you raise your hand if you can see everything okay? All right, good. All right, thank you. So welcome. This is not the orientation I had planned, but we'll just move forward kind of quickly, I guess. So I want to talk about who the gifted kids are in Virginia, because sometimes that's kind of different. We'll talk a little bit about the regulations, because I'm going to talk more about them when we get into the regular the regular meeting. I'll give an overview of our meeting process and then some expectations from you as members. So the committee was started in 1982 by the Board of Education, and it provides advice and recommendations to the superintendent and the Board of Education. And basically they provide us with a charge each year. And as a result, we provide them with information. And I would say typically that takes about 2 years to gather the information that they have requested. But occasionally there's some additional questions, but it's been extremely rare. So anyway, typically we're working on something, that a report or something that they have asked for. We meet 4 times a year, usually in person, and that again is dependent on funding. If the funding's not available, then it definitely would be virtual. The committee is composed of around 20 to 22 members, and from a variety of organizations, positions across the state. And there's no specific requirement that we have certain positions like some of the advisory committees have. Okay. We usually just call ourselves VACEG, and there's a lot of acronyms that are very similar to this, but anyway, that's usually what you will see in the email subject line when I send you something that is pertaining to VACEG. We have a chair, we have vice chair, we have a secretary, and we have standing committees, which is the nominating committee, and then the executive board. So who are the gifted? There is a definition in the regulations, and I'm just going to kind of summarize that, but basically it says that the gifted students are the students not served by the regular curriculum in the school division, that they need something that goes beyond the regular curriculum. And so if you think about that, it's very different characteristics that may define a gifted student in different school divisions. If a school division has an extremely high-powered curriculum, then the kids not served by that curriculum are going to be the students at the very top. And if a school division doesn't have a very high-powered curriculum, that they meet the minimum standards of the SOL, then the gifted kid might be the kid who is just, people think of as a high ability kid, maybe operates around the 90th percentile, if you want to think about it that way. And they're considered gifted by that school division. But if they move to the school division with a real high power curriculum, they may not be considered gifted anymore because the regular curriculum is going to meet their needs. So, the common prevailing thought of a gifted student is really smart, exceptionally smart, way smarter than everybody else. But that may not necessarily be so in some divisions. They may just be really high ability kids, and they just need some higher level curriculum than what's typically offered by the school division. And again, that varies from place to place. People have a hard time understanding that there's kind of 2 different trains of thought. That gifted means really, really smart. And in our state, it means those kids not served by the regular school's curriculum at the upper end. And so that's something that you need to really keep in the back of your mind when we think about different things as we go through our work on this committee. And so every school, we have 132 different definitions of gifted in our state. Well, actually probably more, because some divisions have identify multiple areas, so they have multiple definitions of what a gifted kid is. I also want to let you know that I've sent out the common myths about gifted education. I think as an advisory committee member, you should read them. Come on. And you should, if people have questions, you should think about these myths as you answer them, because oftentimes they do have this myth in the back of their mind. And, it is important to understand that things like AP courses are great for gifted kids. Well, not necessarily. When you look at what's good curriculum for gifted kids, AP courses don't necessarily meet that criteria. I know they've done some work to change that, but in general, because of the way they're taught and very scripted, they don't necessarily meet the needs of gifted kids. So keeping some of these things in the back of your mind is really important. And I would suggest reading them and getting a better understanding of them. You might go to NAGC's website. Our regulations were actually approved in 2010, and then there was a one-word change in 2012 that had to do with a code change across the state. And that one-word change made it so advisory committees at the local level were not required, not mandated. But in the current state, and I'll get into this a little bit, our regulations had started through the NORA process to be changed, and they currently have been withdrawn. There's different components of the regulations, who it applies to, some definitions, screening, referral, identification services, parents' rights, and then some information about your local plan, what should be in a local plan, advisory committee, the annual report, and then just a brief statement on funding. But all these areas are regulations that school divisions have to adhere to when they develop their local plan. We do have a document online that deals with understanding the regulations, and I think it's helpful to parents, especially parents of students who maybe haven't been identified gifted, so that they can understand what the regulations are all about and what school divisions are to provide. It's going to need to be revised. It was revised way back when I first started here in 2000, I think 9 maybe. One of the first things we did was revise what was called the Virginia Plan for the Gifted, which was a mishmash of a lot of different things, but we changed it way back. But it will need to be revised once we revise the regulations again. It's meant, for board members, parents, students, and other members, and it is all available online. We have a reference guide, and the reference guide used to be used a lot by the school divisions to look at their local plans and make sure they were on target. But I think as the years have gone by, this document has been used less and less. Initially, when we revised it in 2011, we linked it to a lot of things that were in NAGC's program plans, best practices, and those things have changed too. So what we might do with this in the future, I'm not sure. But for right now, it'll stay online, but it will be something we'll be looking at once the regulations go through their review process. We have other things online that the VACG developed in 2013 and 15, and that was educational opportunities for both middle school and high school students, 2 separate documents. And if you haven't had a chance to look at those, gives you an idea of different things that are happening across the state. There is other documents that deal with advisory boards and committees and their roles and responsibilities. And different things about programs for the gifted, for Twice Exceptional, some information that looks at how things are in the SPED world and how they're very different in the gifted world. And basically, I think the biggest difference for you to understand is in the SPED world, they're identifying the services a student needs to be successful in school. And those services follow the student wherever they go. In the gifted education world, we're identifying kids for a program of services that are being offered. And if the student goes somewhere else, those services do not follow the student. You either opt in for the program or you opt out. So that's part of the confusion behind identifying gifted kids. Oftentimes there's really exceptional kids, but they don't want to participate in the programs that are offered for gifted students. And so they may not even want to go through the referral process to be identified so they can attend those programs. We have parents who opt kids out of that referral process. There are several documents about diversity, and I believe I sent you one of those that was done before the board, that went before the board. And these are more documents that were produced for the board and are not necessarily published on our website, but are on the board's website. Our typical meeting is kind of more informal, and we go through an agenda, and part of that agenda is the report by the DOE. Usually we have a charge, and so we have subcommittee work that goes on, and sometimes this goes on after the meeting. Where you work with your subcommittee members to gather some additional information. Usually we have some kind of group meeting as a whole to discuss what the subcommittees have gone over. There's a report out session that you can speak to very briefly about maybe something that's happening in your school division, your local area, or the institution you work with. And but it should be something that would be informative to everybody. A lot of times people in the past were giving lengthy presentations of every single thing that had been done that related to gifted, and it was typically stuff that other people were doing at the same time, gathering applications for the summer residential program. But this kind of sharing or reporting has to do with maybe something that's different or unique in your particular school division or location or institution. And then we have time for public comment if there are any. So what's expected of you? Since we only meet 4 times a year, we really expect you to attend and participate in the research or the study of whatever issue we're looking at. And that also might be doing some writing and, for the document itself. And really staying for the entire meeting. I know everybody is extremely busy and has other commitments, but oftentimes, if you're a member where you're coming and you're spending an hour and then you're leaving, your spot is important and we need you to contribute to the organization. And so if you're not there for the whole, oftentimes we meet for 5 hours. If you're not there for the whole 5 hours or something, it does make it difficult and put more responsibility on your team members to do the work that needs to be done. So if you can't commit to that, then or you're not showing up for meetings, I will, over the course of a year, if you haven't shown up for any of the meetings, I might ask you to resign. But this is a commitment, and hopefully you realize that, and you're here for the 3 years, and you're able to assist with the work that we do, because it is very important. Again, as a representative of the organization, you can also bring forward concerns that you might see happening in the field, issues that you think as a committee or at the DOE we should be looking at and addressing that have maybe kind of flown under the radar, and we're not aware that all of a sudden this is becoming an issue. So that it's an opportunity for you to kind of raise those kind of issues during the meeting as well. Certainly you have lots of opportunities to get more information, and you can always reach out to me as far as that goes, but lots of information is on the website as well. So let's see. Okay. And time-wise, we got 5 minutes. So if I kind of went through that really quickly. I provided you with a lot of things to look at home. I would say the bulk of them are just articles and stuff that you might want to read. There's a few of them that are more related to the DOE. So if you if you do have any questions, though, right now would be your chance to ask them. Okay, well, I'm glad we finally got to kick this meeting off, and I'm going to look forward to actually hopefully meeting y'all in person at some point in time, and I'll let you know why we didn't do that once I provide you with the update today. So I'm going to take just a short break and grab something to drink, because I'm not used to talking. I'm used to sitting here by myself. So let me grab some water real quick. Let's see. We're still waiting on a few more participants. Might just go ahead and start.
Good morning.
Morning. We're almost have all our members in. I think in the interest of time and the fact that this meeting is live and being recorded, just FYI, I am going to go ahead and start the meeting, but technically, and we kind of do this backwards, but the first thing on our agenda is to introduce and welcome everybody, and we do have a lot of new members. So I'll tell you what, I think what I'll do is I'll just call on the person, and if you will unmute yourself and say hello and maybe where you're from, we can just kind of go through everyone so that you have an opportunity to at least hear where people are from. So the first person on my list is Cheryl Lindemann.
Good morning. Greetings from Central Virginia and Lynchburg, Virginia. I'm Cheryl Lindemann, and I am a retired governor's school faculty member and also recently retired from Randolph College. So I send greetings from Central Virginia.
Okay, Christine Hill.
Hi, everyone. I am joining you from the Coast City Public Schools. I'm the new assistant superintendent here, but I'm a former director of gifted services and am just happy to be part of the group. So thanks, Donna.
Dara Hall.
Good morning. My name is Dara Hall. I'm the Executive Director of Teacher Education and Student Success at James Madison University. I serve in the capacity as a parent advisor for Rockingham County Public Schools.
David Knapp.
Hi, everyone. My name is David Knapp. I'm the Associate Director of the Metropolitan Educational Research Consortium in the School of Education at Virginia Commonwealth University. And I lead a large research team that's focused on equitable access and support for advanced coursework across K-12. And we have a few different initiatives about expanding advanced coursework throughout the Commonwealth. So I'm excited for this overlap with our work with this committee.
Thank you. Felicia.
I'm Dr. Felicia Loman Sykes, and I'm from Washington County, Virginia, in the southwest portion of the state. And I currently serve as the secretary of this board.
James.
I'm guessing as in Stone King. Hello, my name is Stone King. That's fine. Appomattox Regional Governor School, which is not in Appomattox. We are centrally located in Petersburg. I chair the social science department there.
Let's see. Okay, I always have trouble with your name. Is it Janin?
Hi, I'm also having technical difficulties today, so I'm on my iPad, which is not usually what I do. But I'm Janin Holmes. I'm in Fredericksburg City. I'm on the school board there, and my work is that I do private practice counseling with children. So, and many of them gifted. So that's what I bring. Thank you. And yes, it's Janin like Shannon.
Okay. And you're also a school board member, am I correct?
Yes. Did I not say that? I'm Fredericksburg City Public School Board member.
Sorry.
Yes. Yes.
Trying to do two things at once here. Kim.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Kim Tuppence. I am in King William County, where I have been a classroom teacher for 25 years. I've been a gifted resource teacher for 13 of those years, most of those at middle school, but this year I am also working with the high school here.
And Lisa.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Burrell. I'm a school principal in Alexandria City Public Schools in Northern Virginia, and I'm the principal of the only full dual language school in my school division. I'm also doing my doctorate in gifted education, so very happy to be part of this committee. Thank you.
Yeah, we always need more people in gifted education. Lori.
Hi, good morning. I'm Lori Betzel. I'm from Fairfax County Public Schools. I'm a specialist in the Advanced Academic Office, which is the gifted office. And I'm excited to be here and be a part of this journey.
Okay, Corey.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Corey Garrett Williams. I am a teacher in Williamsburg, James City County Public Schools. I teach high school English, but I'm also the gifted resource teacher, as it were, at this level and representing Region 2. And this is my 18th year of teaching. So excited also about this journey, Lori. And so I am slated to become the chair of this committee. So super excited about that opportunity as well. So good morning to everyone.
And Megan?
Hi, I'm Megan Scott. I'm the Gifted Instructional Specialist in Virginia Beach City Public Schools.
Rebecca? Let's see.
Hi, I'm Rebecca, and I'm the Gifted Resource Teacher here in Stafford County at Edward E. Drew Middle School. This is my 3rd year doing Gifted. I was a science teacher for 10 years, but I got into Gifted because of my son. I wanted to understand him and help him better. So this led me here. Nice to meet you all.
Okay, Sarah?
Hi guys, I'm Sarah Dukas. I'm in the southwest part of Virginia as well, Region 7 in Scott County. I'm the gifted coordinator and an assistant principal.
Sorry, I have a needy dog. Or my daughter does anyway. Shelley?
Yes, I'm Shelley Andrews. I am from Winchester, Virginia, in the northwesternmost part of the state in Frederick County. I'm currently assistant principal at James Wood High School, where I supervise the gifted program and act as liaison to Mountain Vista Governor's School. And I am a former gifted resource teacher.
Okay, Tracy?
Good morning, I'm Tracy Addison. I am a middle school English teacher in Roanoke County. But I think probably more importantly, I'm a parent of a gifted student, and I've navigated it as a parent through all these years, which is what really made me want to get involved.
And Wendy?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Wendy King, Supervisor of Gifted Education for Loudoun County Public Schools, and I also serve as the president for the Virginia Association for the Gifted, and I'm very happy to be here today.
And everybody's name started changing positions as you spoke, so I hope I got everyone. Did I miss anyone? If so, please unmute and introduce yourself. We are missing, I know Roseanne had indicated to me she could not be here, and I'm not sure who else we're missing. I think that might be it.
Donna, Melanie is trying to get in. She's in the waiting room.
Oh, well, she's not showing up on the list. I wonder if she...
I will send her a note to remind her that it's the new
link?
login. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, for whatever reason, 2 people did not show up on this. Sorry. Usually it comes across the top, but it wasn't doing that. So we'll let Carla and Melanie introduce themselves when they get on. Oh, Melanie's on. So
yeah.
Melanie, introduce yourself. Sorry.
I apologize. We were having all kinds of tech problems.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Dr. Melanie Lichtenstein. I am the Talent Development Specialist for Albemarle County.
Okay. And Carla, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sorry. Hi. Yes. I'm Carla Van Devender. I'm assistant professor and director of the program for the exceptionally gifted at Mary Bowen University in Stanton, Virginia.
Okay. And I apologize. Usually it shows up that someone's in the waiting room, and it did not show up that you guys were in the waiting room. I'm sorry. Sorry about that. We're just having all kinds of technical difficulties today, or I am anyway. So the first thing on the agenda is for us to welcome and introduce everybody. And I really am glad to be able to see you, but I would really love to be able to meet you in person. And hopefully at some point this year that will happen. It could have happened this year, but for this meeting. But as you will see when I get ready to do my updates, that option just didn't seem cost effective. So one of the things that we do here is do a draft agenda. And if there are anything, major changes to the agenda that need to be made, we will make that and then approve the agenda to move forward. So are there any changes that need to be made to the agenda? And Felicia, even though you're not officially elected, I hope you are taking notes. Okay.
I am. I'm taking minutes.
Okay. All right. So if there are no changes being mentioned, then we'll go ahead and have a vote. You can either visually raise your hand or you can do the little raise your hand reaction or emoji or whatever it is called. All in favor of accepting the agenda as it is, either raise your hand somehow and that looks to be unanimous. Okay, and the next thing on the agenda is actually to elect officers. So the nomination committee put these names forward at their last meeting in April. And we have the opportunity to elect Corey Williams as chair, Melanie Lichtenstein as vice chair, and Felicia Loman Sykes as secretary. So yes, are there any nominations from the floor? And not hearing any, I'm gonna ask that you approve the slate of officers as I stated. All in favor, raise your hand. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So Corey, I will let you welcome everyone as the new chair of the Virginia Advisory Committee for the Education of the Gifted.
Well, good morning again, everyone. I am super excited about this opportunity. This is actually my second term on the committee. And actually, I also serve on the board along with Wendy as the secretary for the Virginia Association for the Gifted. And so just really super excited about being able to represent teachers and bring their voice to the committee or continue to. And just see how the hard work that we put in the last 3 years to see that come into fruition on the ground with those that are on the front lines, using some metaphors for the Army. So super excited. And thank you all for this opportunity. And let's get to work.
Okay, I'm going to let you kind of lead us through next steps, even though I am the next step.
And I'm sure that you kind of went over this, Donna, but for our new folks, and just as a refresher for our more seasoned folks, we typically do have a report from Dr. Poland. It as you know, just kind of updates of what's going on at VDOE, and then we have some discussion. Usually where we have that member discussion, that's typically where we may even break up into some small groups and do some work. And then we typically end the meeting with reports from our representative organizations, consortium, that sort of thing. And then there is a public comment period that we allow, and then give any kind of updates and that sort of thing. But then also what's a really good opportunity is for us to share what's happening in our various divisions and areas different events that may be coming up, programs and activities that might benefit our parents, our students, our families, and our teachers. So that's typically how the agenda pretty much flows. And so you can kind of anticipate what's going to happen in during our time together. And so with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Donna for any updates from BDOE.
Okay, so just kind of going to go down the line here and talk about a few things. I have had a meeting with new coordinators, and we had almost close to 40 new coordinators, and I'm not sure that I even had everyone that I should have had, because people were still changing right there in September. So that meeting went well, and I explained to them a lot of information. But again, you know, every year it's a large turnover rate. It always surprises me when you look at 132 school divisions and you're getting, you know, somewhere between 30 and 40 new coordinators every year. And I will say, typically, you know, the new coordinators are in positions where they wear multiple hats, and oftentimes gifted education is not the area that they have been trained in, but yet, you know, they're responsible for making sure that identification practices and programs meet the needs of gifted students. And so, you know, the other organizations in our state are great opportunities for them to experience professional development, to help educate them more about what it means to be gifted in Virginia, and more specifically, what it might mean to be gifted in their school division, and what kinds of programs best serve gifted students. Anyway, this is you know, oftentimes they have little amount of time to do professional development because they are wearing multiple hats. But I have had a session with new coordinators, and again, it was just about 40 new individuals in that meeting. There's also a group of educators that are the coordinators of gifted programs that meet as their own group. They have their own officers, and they're responsible for doing their own things. I just participate when asked. And this year, usually we call them consortium, and the consortium usually meets in the end of September, 1st of October timeframe, and oftentimes in Charlottesville for an all-day conference. And I usually combine that with my new coordinators meeting the day before. But since they are not back in person yet, they are holding a series of webinars and different kinds of opportunities for professional development virtually. And so sometimes you will hear reports from different individuals here in our committee about something perhaps that has happened in consortium. And I did present at consortium and just kind of address some of the issues that they had concerns about, such as the regulations and virtual programming options for gifted students, things like that. Academic year governor schools directors meet periodically, and they their meeting is scheduled for well, they met early part of or last part of August, and they will meet again in sometime here. It's October, November timeframe. They're really been looking at diversity issues within those governor schools. They are required to fill out an annual diversity report. This is the second year of that requirement from the General Assembly, and that's completed by October 1. So they have completed that report. And they're just working at trying to get their school started and dealing with some of the issues, faced with COVID and virtual environments and that kind of thing. So, we're off to a good start, and I'm looking forward to hearing how things are going for them when we meet again. We do have members of VAG here. And so typically what I do is I let them kind of report out if somebody would like to report out about VAG at this time. That's the Virginia Association for the Gifted. That's kind of our statewide organization that is also kind of like NAGC is for the national level. This is our state level organization, and it is comprised of members from across the community and parents and can have students. So let me see who is VAG. I'm trying to look at everybody's name.
I am going to defer to Ms.
Okay.
King.
Go ahead,
Speak
Corey.
on that one. Yes, ma'am.
I'm happy to do that. And Corey, you back me up if there's anything that I'm missing.
All right. Sorry, Wendy.
No problem at all. You'll get used to me. I'm just happy to update that Virginia Gifted is working on a couple of initiatives right now. One is that we just had a recent board meeting, and we agreed that we are going to provide some parent, or I should say family, opportunities this year. Some family, we're calling them webinars. And our next one is October 28th. And I will get you the exact time. I believe it's 7:30. Corey, you want to back me up on that? Am I right?
Yes, I'll pull up the flyer.
Oh, excellent. And Dr. Susan Baum will be joining us, and she is a leader in our field on working with twice exceptional students. And this time she'll be talking about executive function and supporting your students' strengths to get them to strengthen those executive function skills. So we're very excited about that. She is fantastic, and I think the parents, families will really appreciate this event. And then we are in the midst of planning our 2022 conference, and we're really hoping that it's going to be in person, and we're looking at places in the state to host that. So those are the two big things for us. And again, that's our parent webinar that's coming up on October 28th, and our planning for our 2022 conference.
Yeah, if you haven't had an opportunity to join the organization, I would suggest that. And you can find that information online, and you can also, I'd recommend, if others in your area are interested, I think oftentimes we forget to pass along the fact that these organizations exist, and it's a nominal fee to join. So
Donna, I just put in the chat that the event is, as Wendy said, October 28th. It's from 7 to 8:30. And the title is What? Meet Organize, Understanding Your Child's Style. So it's going to be an awesome event, and you can register online by going to vagifted.org.
Okay. So next up on the list is regulations. So as many of you know, because you're past members, and some of you know because you've been more involved, the regulations governing the education of gifted students was opened and that's an official process, a NORA process. And it goes through we have three columns of flow charts, and not everything is even on there, but it does go through a very regimented process. And before the NORA was opened, we actually, as a group, and it's been much more many members than what you see here, because every year, some members rotate off and other new members come on, but we have worked on the revision of those regulations based on 2 documents on diversity that we spent several years doing research on, and site visits and interviews and surveys and all kinds of things went into those documents. And then we use them as to help guide us through looking at components of the regulations. We also looked at a lot of other research in the field to help inform decisions about best practices. And then we made recommended changes to those regulations. They did initially pass through the Board of Education. Initially they were opened by the board, and then we proposed changes, and those changes were reviewed and accepted by the board. It moved forward, and there was a report done by the Department of Planning and Budget with regard to the impact of those changes to the Commonwealth. And then and that was approved and moved forward to the next step to the governor. The governor would have kind of signed off on the proposed regulations, and it doesn't approve them at that point. That's just the start of column 2 on the flow chart, but it sets them up for 60-day public comment, and then there could be revisions and changes and everything after that. But at the point before the governor actually signed off on them, the board decided to withdraw these regulations. And actually what they have done is contracted with Education Trust. It's an organization, I believe, out of DC, and have given them the opportunity to review these regulations and provide some feedback on the changes and some different components. And as part of that feedback, they will be doing focus groups and some additional data gathering and information gathering. And then they will submit a report back to the Department of Education. That will not be accomplished until sometime in June of 2022. So that is why I elected to kind of put us on this virtual meeting, because we part of our mission has been to address the changes over the last 2 years, make recommendations with regard to the regulations. And then as a result of that, we have also been looking at the information that is presented in the annual report. And for those of you who may not be in the school division and active with the annual report on a regular basis, the annual report is comprised of student data that is submitted at the end of the year. So when you look at an annual report, it's really reflective of the prior year. You might see it in the fall, but it really reflects what happened in the prior year. It shows the students who were referred that year. It shows the numbers of students at grade levels in areas of giftedness. It shows the same students by ethnicity, race, and it shows the students by gender, and then it provides some information about the background of the person actually serving as the gifted coordinator for the division. And that is part of what the coordinator fills out at the start of the year. And that's their responsibility to complete that component of the annual report. They are also required to complete kind of a checklist, if you will, of service options that they have available under the different areas of giftedness that they identify in. So they kind of complete those components, those two background and program components, and then the student data information is actually pulled from the end of year report that the school division completes. And part of what we were dealing with over the last year that we looked at was to take the information that is actually submitted as part of the end of year report, because there's a lot of information in that end of year report that school divisions fill out, but it wasn't part of our annual report. And so we were looking at those kind of components, but we were also looking at the way that information was presented. It was just raw numbers, and you had no idea, like, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing that I have 2 kids, in this program? It didn't give you a full picture of what you were looking at, especially if you're one of the new coordinators that are coming into this position without a background in gifted education, and you have multiple hats. And so your full attention is not on the gifted education program. And, you're looking at some raw data that you have no idea whether it's good or bad, or, where you need to improve or why you need to improve. You don't know any of those things. So we spent the last year trying to look at the new proposed regulations, what kinds of things we had proposed, like a talent development program for young kids in age, grades kindergarten through 2nd grade. And if we were asking school divisions or requiring school divisions to have a talent development program, then we wanted some way for them to identify students that were referred for that program or screened or something. And we also wanted to see how many kids got admitted into that program. And so it was kind of 2 things. We were looking at how can we better serve school divisions by presenting them with information that was useful, that they could use to help improve their program in their identification process. But also, if we had new components of the regulations being proposed and then hopefully eventually approved, how can we capture those kinds of things in our annual report as well? And so we spent a lot of time doing that. And, now we don't know how these new proposed regulations are going to be reviewed or changed, whether there'll be things that we propose will be accepted or not. And it kind of puts us in a situation where, we need to think about what's our next steps? What are we going to do while we're waiting till June of 2022? That's this entire year to find out, how the regulations might look and how they're going to move forward. So that's going to be part of our next session, but I'm just trying to prep you into the fact that we have spent a lot of time looking at our annual report and things that we think we may need with that, and how that information may go, and then and how that relates to our proposed items in our regulations. and so we're just kind of like at a stalemate. And that's why I felt like it would be better to do this meeting virtually than to pay for people who travel long distances and their time and everything to come to the meeting. Anyway, that is probably the main reason why I decided to have this meeting virtually. But we will be discussing next year's work, or this year's work rather, and brainstorming, kind of what we're going to do. I know I kind of said a lot. Is there any questions on that before I move forward to some of the next items?
I think doing it virtually makes sense, and I appreciate you saving the gas and time. Thank you.
It's kind of a quick thing for new members. This board has very limited funds. And so oftentimes, some of the members pay for gas or come, on their own. And some of the members have their school divisions or their organization that they represent help support their travel to the meeting. But there are some members who travel, 5 hours from the far side of the state. And so typically we might reimburse you for mileage, and that comes out to enough to pay for your gas and usually a hotel room. And so, we pay for the gas, but or the mileage, and the way that works out is usually enough to cover the gas, although the prices have gone up and up and up, and a hotel room for you to be able to come the day before, spend the night, and then leave after the meeting. But I always ask, if you live close by, if you live within a 2 to 3 hour time frame, that you get some support from either your school division or organization to help with gas, because probably wouldn't spend the night, unless some people have friends, and so they come the night before and stay with their friends and then come to the meeting in the morning. One of the other things I'm going to talk about is the technical review. And for those of you who may not know, we do a technical review every year for about 1/5, about 1/5 of the state. We have the state divided up into 10 different regions, and then we do 2 regions every year. So every 5 years, the local gifted plan for school division is reviewed by peers in the field. And so I really call on my more experienced and trained gifted coordinators to serve as leads on the review team, and to work with other individuals to review a local plan and provide feedback to the school division. In years past, this process was done very strictly because the state was actually approving local plans. And so if you didn't meet the requirements, then you got a big not approved red stamp on your local plan, and it was sent back to you to make corrections in your plan and to do things differently. But right before I took this position in 2008, the Attorney General ruled that the state does not have the authority to approve a local plan, that authority rests with the local school board. And so while we do technical reviews of the local plan, it is an informative process. We just provide some feedback to school divisions as to how they might improve their local plan, or if they have failed to address a requirement in the regulations. We comment that we cannot find this component and it needs to be addressed. And oftentimes we give kudos to the school division for really thoroughly addressing one of the issues that is required as part of the plan. So it is a feedback mechanism, and while we may make recommendations such as you need to provide this additional program option, or you might consider identifying students in this area in your division, a lot of these things may require funding or additional staffing or things like that. So it's really up to the division and their school board to decide if they're going to move forward with a recommendation. If the item itself has not been addressed at all and it is required by the regulations, then that is something that they really need to address. But it is not a kind of document where we say you absolutely have to do what we're saying you have to do, which is the feedback that was given before every 5 years. We do the technical review every 5 years, but it doesn't necessarily mean that someone's plan has to be revised or done every 5 years. The schedule of the plan and how that operates is up to the school division. And most people don't realize that, but that's it. I try to make that very clear, and I try to let new coordinators know, just because we're reviewing your plan every 5 years does not mean that you have to be on that same schedule for changing it. It should really be a living document. And every year, if there's something that you need to do to improve it, you should submit an addendum to the board. And then when you get, a few of those and you really think, hey, we need to actually change the whole document to make it look different and to address some other issues, then you change the whole document. So that might be at a 3-year mark, or it might be at a 4-year mark. But it does not have to coincide with the technical review. In fact, it really shouldn't. You should think about getting the information of the technical review and then at some point changing your plan afterwards, after you gather some maybe additional information from your constituent group or your teachers, or other administrators in the school division, principals, and then think about changing your plan. But anyway, we're gathering names right now for the technical review. This will be virtual. We used to do it and have 2 sessions kind of all day where everybody got together in teams and talked and shared ideas. And it's a great learning opportunity and professional development opportunity for gifted coordinators and other maybe lead teachers in the division to look at another plan, to get critical feedback from other people. Sorry about the dog. And in other school divisions, and we've kind of got to the point where it's virtual now. So we haven't we haven't gone back to in person yet, and I'm not sure we will, because this allows some teams of 3 to set their own schedule and do their own thing. Anyway, I don't know what she's barking at, but Hazel. This must be somebody coming up to the house. That's all I can figure. Let's see, where are we on the next steps? So Summer Residential Governor School, and I am thrilled to announce that the new information for the Summer Residential Governor School hit the webpage this morning. That has been another huge technical difficulty across the state. Apparently, they did some major updates to the whole state computer system. And as a result, the can you just give me just a minute here? Let me see if I can do something with her. I'm sorry about that. So apparently this update across the state did a lot of different things that were not positive. And so we actually were not, the webmaster was not able to go in and update pages that were already there. She could post new stuff like on a new page, but she couldn't take the page that was already there and update the information on it. Anyway, she worked hard to create a workaround because it's still not fixed. And she's not the only, I mean, we're not the only agency that's had issues with a lot of other things as well. But she did do a workaround and she was able to get the information up. The superintendent's memo will be released today. And when it is, I will send an email out to all coordinators and private school, my private school regional coordinators and my program directors that the information is finally posted. We had hoped that all this would be done electronically through SurveyMonkey. And I started working with SurveyMonkey this summer because we had an initial meeting and went over a lot of things and they were like, oh, no problem, no problem. And then when we started really getting into the whole nitty gritty of how everything worked, you were like, wow, this is more complicated than we thought. And I was like, yeah, I kind of thought that myself. But anyway, at one point we ran out of contracted hours. And so we had to initiate a new contract extension to add additional hours. And so at some point we actually have things kind of done, but I decided it was too late to try to do training because again, it's very complicated and it is going to be something new that people are going to have to get used to. And it's not like it's an extremely easy process. It's still at some level got some complications and not complications, but it's not like it simplifies the task in a tremendous way where you're just pushing one button and everything's all done. It's still got a lot of components that have to be done just like they were in the past, except you're doing it electronically versus with paper. And, you know, on my end, the benefit I see is that the electronic version hopefully has the information entered correctly instead of the student entering information on the paper and then the school division entering information into a computer system. You know, it eliminates some of the clerical kinds of errors that occur. And it also troubleshoots situations where things aren't completed, like things have not been signed off, and the school division misses that the fact that the parent never signed off on this, the application won't move forward unless the parent signs off on it. So there's components like that that are going to help in the long run for some situations, but it's not necessarily going to make things a lot easier. It might mean you won't have to enter information. That part will not have to be done for divisions that submit, like 150 student applications. They're not going to have to enter those names. They're just going to have to click submit to state, submit to state, submit to state. So that'll be good. But there's still the review process. It might be a little bit complicated to try to get everyone together to review applications. But anyway, we're going to do some piloting this year, and I'm going to have some divisions actually work with me to submit the paper copy like usual, but we're going to also look at submitting an electronic version, because I'm going to have to supply them with the links, and they're going to have students work with them, and it may be maybe they have 10 students applying and they're only going to have 3 students fill out the forms or something, but and that's fine. We just want to try to troubleshoot and work our way through it and make sure it's okay before I start training people at the state, maybe next in the spring timeframe or summer timeframe. I'll work to train everybody so that everybody understands how the process will work. And I think in the long run, it'll be a good thing. And maybe at some point we can simplify it. So one of the other things that I have been working on, and I wish I could tell you more but it's just at the very start phases, is that the Department of Education is actually going to have a dashboard on the website where anyone can go in and call up data with respect to different components that are collected by the state. And then how that data is going to be presented will also change. It might be that you see it as an Excel spreadsheet. You might see it as a bar graph. Might see it as a pie chart, depending on the data and what best represents, a story, so to speak. That kind of visual presentation will show up. So we've had our first meeting, and I only go to the meetings where it deals with the gifted information. All the other information is dealt with at other meetings. And so we have a meeting that'll be coming up to look at some of the models. They've taken some, in our initial talk, they took some of the comments I made and talks about the information that's available and what we would like to see. And they are looking at how to best represent that data. And then at this next talk, I'm hoping that they actually have some visuals for me to see and be able to say, yay, that looks great. And so some of the work that we were doing on our annual report will be available, hopefully, through this dashboard on the DOE's website. I still think we're going to have to be sure that some of that annual report information, even though it may be the same, is represented in the annual report, because one of the recommendations that we had in our regulations was to require that the annual report be presented to the school board. And so we want to make sure that the information that's in the annual report, even if it is a duplicate from what's on the dashboard, if it's important, if it's something we feel like the school board needs to know, it still should be in our annual report. And it may be represented the same way as it is on the dashboard, or there may be something else that we want to combine with it to show, like, this is how many kids were referred in this grade level, and this is how many were accepted. Maybe they don't show that on the dashboard, but it's something we want to show in our annual report. And it may be that it's shown on the dashboard, but it's shown separately and not together. So I still think we need to duplicate information if it's important information that needs to go to the school board, that we need to make sure the school board understands what's happening with their gifted program, because remember, they're not necessarily trained in gifted education either. So we need to present them with information that helps them make informed decisions. But this is something new, and I'm thrilled that gifted information is there, and that people don't actually have to submit a FOIA request to be able to see information that I think they should be able to see, along with all the other information that's provided about a school division. I think I have updated you on everything. Just kind of let me get a quick look here. Oh, one of the things that we are doing over this next year, and some of you may be working with the director of the Summer Residential Governor School for Visual and Performing Arts, we are trying to move that adjudication process at the state level to be electronic instead of in person. And we think this will better serve students in the fact that it may not necessarily be a one-day capture of what they're doing, and a day where they don't feel well or something like that, and or they had a stressful ride to get to the adjudication. This will hopefully provide an opportunity for them to put their best foot forward to provide some kind of either taped or some kind of product that represents their best effort. And I know Wayne has reached out to a couple of coordinators at divisions and is working with them over this next year to make that process more electronic. And there may be some in-person interviews and things like that happen. So, but the actual performance might be electronic, and that would be great, because I think it will open up some opportunities for kids who think they don't have a chance because they can't drive there, or get someone to drive them there for the adjudication process. And just kind of on a personal note, some of you are aware I've been president of the National Organization of Directors of Gifted Programs at the state level. So it's myself and colleagues from across the country that serve in my same position. And this is the end of my 2 years as very complicated 2 years as president, but we have done a lot of professional development and really have moved more to a virtual platform, which has been very cost effective, and especially state agencies doing things. So, that's been good, but we still have our annual meeting in November. And so once I get that done, I'll be finished, but I it's been a very positive experience, and I'm thankful for the opportunity, and it's been a great organization. But anyway, any questions about our state and any updates I provided?
I have a question, Donna, regarding Governor's School, the summer residential. Were there any number counts that changed or stayed the same of student participants? I think I'm seeing here that it looks like for VPA is still 250 students, but humanities is staying at 150 instead of returning to 200. Is that the case?
Yes, that program, the two programs together, and it's kind of one contract, serves 400 students. And when we looked over the last 10 years, past 10 years, at the application numbers for humanities, they have dwindled over time. And so trying to even get 200 students who would benefit from the program has been difficult. It's been a situation where if we've had 200 applications, and sometimes we've had like 203, a lot of the students were really not, I'm not going to say qualified, but best candidates for the program in terms of academic ability. Technically, I would have asked school divisions to weed those students out, because they're really not students that should have come forward at the state level. On all criteria, they were very low. And, point wise, we're talking about students who may score a 50 out of 100 points. We've taken students before that have been in the 70 range, but I'll tell you, most students that are in programs are, somewhere around 80 and to 100, even in that humanities program. And when you're looking at the application down in the 50s with low grades, low standardized test scores, no participation in outside activities, and things like that, I've reached out to the coordinator and they've said, well, we just didn't want to tell the child no. We don't think they're really qualified either, but we just didn't want to tell them no. So these programs are not necessarily just the next level up, in terms of coursework or something like that. These programs reach out in a whole different venue, kind of, and really explore things that sometimes college kids don't even have access to their first 2 years of school. They get to see things and do things and discuss things at a very high level. And what we find is if we put students in there that really don't thrive in that kind of environment, they don't do well and they wind up leaving. And then that school division money and that state money down the drain, and it's not a good situation for the student all the way around. So we've just struggled getting kids into the humanities programs, but not so with the arts. We adjudicate, when we were doing 200 slots a year, we'd have over 1,000 adjudications for those 200 slots. And, it's just, we have great talented art students, and we just decided to, since we serve 400 kids, we decided to open up the arts to more students, because we have a lot of qualified kids that wanted to get in, and take our numbers down a little bit in the humanities because we weren't getting the applications for that program. Other questions?
Thank you, Donna, for the clarification.
I have a question, Donna. So, with that being said, what are some things that they can do to kind of, I guess, I don't know if it's look at the program, look at the application and criteria, like what are some things that we can do to improve that if the numbers are not as we would like for them to be? Like, what do you think?
So one of the things that the program did 2 years ago or so was they put together a video that they were hoping would help spur kids to consider applying. We haven't, I think part of it, as I think about education in the school divisions over the years and what kind of changes we're seeing in the application over the years, of course, there's been a huge push for STEM, and we are seeing a lot more applications in the STEM programs. And I think that has to do with the fact that, here kids are towards the end of their school career, K-12 career, and they've done a lot of stuff with STEM, and that's where their interest is. And, the liberal art kind of humanities area has just not been one that's been pushed or highlighted in the school divisions. And so I just think kids are applying to areas that they think they're interested in or will help them move their career forward, or admissions into college, into a certain program. I feel comfortable with 150. I think that's going to be a good number. And, the applications that we get, for the most part, are strong and they're suited for that program. But when we look at 200 needing 200 slots, they're just not enough strong ones for 200, but there are for 150. So I feel good about that. Other questions, Wendy?
I did have a question. When you're talking about the dashboard that will display data from the annual reports, do you have a general timeline of when you think that might go up? And the reason I'm asking is I just feel like this year numbers will look different than they normally would because of COVID. And I just worry that having the first year that they're displayed, on a year where some people maybe delayed eligibility process, or people opted out of the process, those numbers will just look skewed. So that was my only concern. And I was wondering what your projected timeline might be.
So I don't have a timeline. I did ask that question and they said, we don't know, because we're just starting to address this. I will say it's not all the information from the annual report. If you go there now, you can click on like fall membership or something like that, and you can call up and say, I want to see a report by division, by, this component by division. And you can pick and choose what kind of things you want to see. And basically you get an Excel spreadsheet that shows you all the numbers. So what they're going to do is change that so that, like, you can see, I think you can see students by ethnicity and things like that, but you can't see like gifted students by ethnicity. There's not a button for you to click the gifted part of it. So, and then basically they're going to take that information and put it into some kind of chart or visualization to make it a little bit easier to understand. It may not be raw numbers. It may only be percentages. I don't know, but it won't be the annual report. It will only be some components of that report, because you'll have to manually go in there and select what it is you want to see. So, so somebody going there will be able to select, oh, I want to see how many gifted kids there are in this division versus that division, or, you know, what areas of giftedness they're identified in, or that kind of component, but it won't be all the information that's part of the annual report. And if I find a timeline, I will let you know. You know, the meeting's coming up here in the next week or so. So maybe they'll have something then.
Thank you.
Donna, Cheryl had a question.
Sure.
Yes, I wanted to ask about the Humanities Summer Governor School program. In their actual program offerings, have they focused on interdisciplinary topics to maybe draw in some of the students interested in STEM who maybe don't get into the STEM summer programs, but still would be a value add for them to realize the full component of STEM and humanities go together?
Well, students can only apply to one program, so they won't know that they didn't get in to a certain program. I think they've tried to do interdisciplinary in the sense that there's some crossover with the visual and performing arts. For instance, they may look at film over the course of history, you know, history of film or something like that, where it looks like the performing arts and how that's changed over time, how film has changed that performing arts over time or something. But it's not necessarily interdisciplinary with STEM subject areas. Other than, you know, they've looked at technology too, you know, history of technology and that kind of thing. And that's kind of been the overarching theme that's come into play in some of their courses and stuff. But well, and Sarah shaking her hand, and you want to make a comment?
Yeah, so my daughter attended the humanities this past summer. It was a phenomenal experience for her. They did have a lot of interdisciplinary sessions to choose from. It was very much a leadership topic area this year. I think that there's two things from the conversation I'm hearing that are important to realize. One is I really think that what you said, Donna, about the fact that certain subjects are pushed right in school. My daughter specifically didn't apply to our local governor's school. My older daughter had gone, but my younger daughter did not, because it was so STEM oriented and it didn't interest her. She wants to study social work and be a guidance counselor, and she has gone to the community college now. She's a senior, she's doing entirely there, but she's taken all of their psychology classes and sociology and anthropology. That's the stuff that excites her. But they don't see that in their high school education. So what they need is to hear it from their gifted coordinators, to talk about, what does this mean? What does humanities mean? Because it's not something that's discussed as a concept in those high school years. And so they know English and they know like history, right? That's what they know and that's what they think it is. And so to be able to market it to English teachers, history teachers, but to share like that kind of information for those that are really excited by those fields, I think would maybe improve the pool that is coming. She happened to have a mother that was very familiar, but not everybody is, right? So that's a piece of it. But I think that the curriculum, the way it stood, was very rich and lots of options.
Thank you. Thank you, Dara. Good to hear. Other questions? You know, we're kind of off schedule time-wise, but not too far. So, Corey, I'm going to turn it back to you. And I've kind of given an update on last year's work, but you're certainly welcome to elaborate and move forward with some brainstorming. We are not going to break into subgroups, but I think, you know, we can brainstorm as a group.
Mhm, mhm. I think so. I know that we had some folks to really put in a lot of work in regards to that data that we were that Donna had kind of spoke about early this year, and particularly Melanie and her team were kind of working on that. So in a second, I'm gonna pass that on to her, but also I would like to hear, like, when we get to the point where we're talking about brainstorming, like what school divisions are doing, and what that could mean, or what it could mean to inform the work that we do on our committee. That might be something that we think about. Just even just a moment ago when we were talking about the humanities governor school and how STEM seems to be pushed at the school division level, and how that may then mean that it's pushing students in this direction, but not everybody gets into that. I mean, that wasn't really, obviously I'm an English teacher, so that wasn't really my, that wasn't my forte, although I could do math. It was quite good at it. That just wasn't necessarily my interest level. And just, you know, just anecdotally in my school division, humanities sort of programs have just seemed to kind of drift away. And I don't know if it's more about the number of students that make, quote unquote, those classes, or if it's just not really talked up with school counselors or teachers or that sort of thing. So I worry that if the reason why they're not going into those programs is because they're not taking those courses at the school division level, I feel like we're definitely going to be missing a whole pocket of students, seriously, because I think what does quite well, as you said, just, you know, in working on the applications. I'm looking at this empty bin here that's going to be filled with applications in a little bit, but those that are interested in the visual and fine arts, those that are interested in our world language program, and, you know, those that are going into those programs that clearly have the passion for it. But what are we doing about those students who might not find their way in those buckets, if you will, but may also be interested in humanities? We may just have to do a better job at the local level, trying to kind of look for those students. But I think, you know, the 150, if that's the number, that's, you know, in other words, if 200 is stretching it, you know what I mean? You want to have quality, you know, you do want to have quality, but you also want to have students that are going to get something out of that program as well. So Melanie, can you kind of talk just briefly, I hate to put you on the spot, but just kind of talk briefly about some of the work that how we ended up our year last year with the work that you guys were doing.
Sure. Cheryl, myself, and Sarah, who is no longer in the group, we kind of went through the newer regulations, the ones that are back being reconsidered, and determined which of the language in there could be quantified, and then considered some of the more up-to-date data and how data is being analyzed around gifted and talent development, and how things like representation indexes are more of an accurate way of looking at gifted numbers. You know, if you have one division that is a predominantly, you know, white, rural, it's not reasonable to compare them to, say, a more urban, you know, African-American, Latinx community, because the numbers are going to be different. But there is a recommendation from scholars in the field that you use formulas like representation indexes, where they look at the actual percentage of students in the different categories that the state recognizes, and then looking at how many of those children are identified as gifted. There is the Equity Allowance Index, which was created by Dr. Donna Ford, which is a really valuable index because it gives you a kind of a distance that you need to travel if identification is the primary way of determining services. And then, just discussing like who is engaged in our advanced coursework options. We looked at the data that was already being collected by the state that may or may not have been a part of explicitly a part of gifted and talented education, but that the information that would have been relevant for the, for coordinators and for divisions to really consider how are we using this data to ensure the access and equity for all students. And so we gave recommendations to Donna, and we've been able to, I know for my division in Albemarle County, we have actually a data analyst on staff, which is really valuable, and it's allowed us to consider what this information looks like. Now, for individual schools and for divisions that have very small populations, sometimes these formulas can be a bit challenging. You get lots and lots of 0.000s, but it's nice to look at, like for us, we've been able to look at what the representation is in our elementary schools, in our middle schools, and our high schools. And instead of comparing the schools to each other or comparing, say, Albemarle County to another county, because every county and division looks different. So I think that kind of covers it.
Yeah, and it's funny because just recently I was kind of asked to look at some data as it relates to our gifted students at my high school, Lafayette High School, in WJCC, and I actually did apply the formula, the Donna Ford's formula to our population here at Lafayette, which is relatively balanced, I guess, in terms of ethnicity, but in terms of representation within, even within gifted, even if you're looking at versus exceptional ed, of course, it's like everywhere else, the overrepresented in exceptional ed, in underrepresented in gifted ed, and even with the balance of ethnicities in our building, I have 17 identified gifted students that are African American. That is 17. 17. I think I probably teach all of them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's it's one of those things where, and I don't even know if everybody is even familiar. But so there's the index, and then there's the goal that there's a formula for basically for both of those, in which you can find out what that looks like, what it looks like in your building, but then also where, like you said before, where we could get to. And then once you apply that to whether it's your school or the division, and my coordinator, Dr. Colorado, has done this, she's very familiar. Then what do you do with that information? And having those, but you have to be ready to have those conversations, and not everybody's ready or willing to have those conversations around that. Even though across the state, the powers that be have been having the conversations and including the language as we did in our regulations. You have to be ready. Yeah.
It's and one of the things that Dr. Dorn, who was another previous member, her dissertation was looking at this data across the division. And one of the things that I think for, at least for Albemarle County, what has helped is that around the time that they were considering kind of reevaluating our data and making data-driven decision-making, we also were moving towards looking at culturally responsive education and really addressing teacher mindset. And I think, like Corey, the example you have of a school that demographics are balanced, but opportunities are limited, or participation in opportunities are limited. As there's a lot of, it's more challenging than just moving numbers. You have to address teacher mindset. You have to address instructional practice. You have to consider, what are you doing in the earlier grades? What are you doing in elementary so that students students and teachers have an asset-based lens on their students. And that's where that talent development piece comes in. And then thinking about how to sustain that. And I'm excited because we have just launched kind of a pilot tool in our student information system here in Albemarle County, where we will be collecting specific talent development service data. So that we can see who at each school is participating and having opportunities within talent development, as opposed to gifted services. But getting these experiences, working with teachers, getting some, and then in an ideal picture, we're going to have like a longitudinal pathway to see how did a child's experience in early elementary go all the way to their high school and post-secondary. So
I'm going to chime in. I know you have your hand up, Cheryl, but I'm going to chime in real quick because we are on a schedule.
Oh, sorry.
And one thing I want to give us the opportunity to do, because we still have to share out any kind of major thing you want to point out to everyone that is happening in your area. And you can pass. Some people have passed and just say, pass, and that'll be fine. But we do need to move forward with kind of brainstorming where we might be, what we might do this year that would be helpful. And, just listening to some of the things you're saying, Melanie and Corey, it might be that we look at, is there something we can write up about talent development, that we can have accomplished by the end of this year, because we only have 3 more meetings left, and write something about talent development programs and how you might either start one or consider one, or, do you need to code students? How do you track it? Those kind of things. It might be a short document that we provide to the field that deals with something like that. But that's my 2 cents, and I'll let Corey kind of handle the brainstorming from the rest of the group.
Yes, ma'am. Let's see, let me get back to, so we've talked about that. And again, just want to kind of, like I said before, want to talk a little bit about what are some ideas that we have from the field that are some things that we could work on possibly from in the next couple of sessions that we have together. So I'll just kind of open the floor if people want to. Some people have been putting some things in the chat, but if you want to unmute yourself and just kind of share what are some things that you would like to, there's some things that we could work on this year.
I love the talent development idea. I think that's great. Another thing that we're looking at in our division is honors level courses and what that looks like, if it's a separate course or if it is a blended course and there's an honors component to a middle school course. And so we've been thinking about, what strategies, even if you had a blended course, what strategies would you want to see used for the gifted students in an honors level course? And so that's something that we're grappling with.
Just to kind of piggyback off of that, Wendy, and it's funny because I just got an email from my coordinator, English coordinator. We kind of have I think we're working towards almost like a parallel curriculum in WJCC, where it's something similar to what you're saying, right? So we have your, what does honors look like versus what does gifted honors look like? And what are we doing in terms of curriculum? What resources are we providing? Because that's where we are right now, just kind of at the resource level. But then what are some things that we can differentiate in terms of content, as well as strategies for our students across the board? Because a lot of times the question that I will hear most often at parent-teacher conference night is, what's the difference between honors and gifted honors and AP? And we literally had that conversation in class. I had to break it down for some of my students what that difference is. So that's awesome that y'all are doing that in Loudoun.
Another question that came up with that is Rigor only for honors courses? And so I think you have to get past that argument. Rigor is for all students, but what does a rigorous course look like for a student who is a gifted learner in a particular subject area? So that idea of rigor in general, and then what would we want to see in an honors level course or component of a course?
In my role as a regional director of the science fair, I work a lot with the gifted and also the science coordinators. And what's up on the table again is what level or where does doing a science research project fit in with opportunities for gifted students. And one of the key components in linking that to the new science standards is communication. And you can have all these ideas, and how do you go about communicating? So we are beefing that up for our region. So I'm very excited that we're having this conversation on an interdisciplinary level that would involve those students and also the talent development piece. So the fifth graders who are considering that, how they're able to wrap the science ideas and communicating all together. So we're really excited how that's moving forward.
David, I think you have your hand up.
Yeah.
I didn't know if Corey saw it. Sorry.
Yeah, so I mentioned this briefly at the beginning, but we have been partnering with Dr. Petrie Martin in Petersburg City Public Schools, sort of building off of some work that she had done in North Carolina, where they had an AP expansion partnership, where they were really intentional and specific about targeting low-income school divisions and racially segregated school divisions. And we spent the summer sort of doing some brainstorming around this and meeting with some stakeholders from VDOE. And our goal is to try to provide a similar program in Virginia, but not have it be just focused on AP, but to try to do sort of like an all of the above approach that also expands access to programs like dual enrollment. So right now we're in the proposal writing phase for that. So we're doing a lot of background research about where are the areas where there's the most need. And that would be great, something that would be great to partner with this group on, because I think that from our study, we're finding that there's a real clear need, not just in the Richmond region, but across the state. And so I think this could be a potential initiative that we could follow, and I'd be happy to help lead it in case anybody's interested.
Thank you, David. Lori, you wanted to share something?
Yeah, thank you. So I think that there's a really cool connection through line that I'm seeing here between what Melanie's sharing and what people are sharing in the chat about the math and also the talent development in our district. We're really intentionally working on that, the two buckets, so to speak, the talent development and our differentiated services. And we've been really focused on how do we provide access to rigor beginning in the lower, even elementary grades all the way up. And I think that connects to what you're talking about with the changes in our math pathways as they're changing from the acceleration piece to the going for more depth and complexity. And so if we look at this, I think that whole access to rigor and talent development seems to be something that's our districts are all working on individually. And if we came together and had that collaboration, it would be a very powerful conversation in the future.
Awesome. Thank you, Lori. Any others that would like to share some ideas? Melanie, did you want to share what you were talking about in the chat?
I did. So when we're talking about the math pathways, historically, math in middle school for advanced students, it would be something called honors, or it would be a high school credit class. And those high school credit classes are often pathways to then advanced coursework in the high schools. So if you do not get into a pre-algebra, algebra 1 geometry class, your pathway is decided before you even have gotten into high school. And that is unfortunate, especially for some of our families that are first gen or are historically disadvantaged in our current system. So I would love for us to begin these conversations around how are we integrating differentiated instruction? Because I know in Elmore County, they've moved towards what they've referred to as de-leveling or unleveling, because frankly, especially in the classes where they have honors or not honors, the standards are the same, and the learning experiences are valuable across. So, but how are we providing differentiated instruction support for our classroom teachers? And then how are we engaging our stakeholders, particularly the families who have become accustomed to their children taking algebra and geometry in middle school and the link I put in there, the infographic kind of gives you a tentative timeline. And it's going to take a couple years to move the understanding of math being around conceptual understanding instead of just procedural. So I think just expecting divisions to make that happen is hard, and because it's a lot more complicated, especially shifting entire understanding of how the system works. It would be helpful to have some guidance so that our educators can be better prepared to communicate and work with families, as well as how are we preparing our children in the elementary grades so that by the time they get to middle school, they can perform successfully in a conceptual way of understanding mathematics. And this is coming from someone who is not a math person, but I know it is something that is very important for our families, and it's a big shift. It's a whole different way of thinking about learning. So, and it made national news. So we probably should get ahead of it.
I will say, there has been a lot of discussion about the math pathways because it does even impact prerequisite requirements for academic year governor schools. And what does that mean when, a student hasn't accomplished algebra 2 by 10th grade? And how is that going to impact what kind of integrated math science classes, or even math courses that are offered at the governor schools? And is that something we have to change in terms of the kinds of curriculum that's offered in governor schools? Do we suddenly not require algebra 2 and we're going to not offer integrated science course because students aren't going to have the math they need in place to be able to offer that? And a lot of the programs are saying we're not duplicating high school efforts. These programs are in place because they are unique and they offer additional high level opportunities that aren't offered. So I think at some level there's some need for guidance. I mean, there's a lot of work that has to be done, I think, in terms of mindsets at the division level for the math coordinators to realize, you can't just change these things and everything's going to fall into place, because a lot of times it doesn't happen that way. Both parent attitudes and other programs that operate off of the fact that you did offer these kinds of courses at earlier ages, and now you're not going to, there are a lot of things that have to be worked out in the process. And, while we're moving forward with the math pathways, I'm not sure that's been totally voted on and approved. I think that is still something that has to be done. But anyway, that's certainly guidance on that. And just in lieu of the time situation, to be mindful of your time, because I know sitting and listening to somebody talk is not necessarily the funnest thing to do. I'm going to reread the stuff that I've written down, and maybe if Felicia wants to add to it with stuff she's written down, she can, and then we can talk about, we might send this out as kind of a select what you would prefer, and we'll come back together and have something set up for our next meeting. But I have one of the things we might look at are providing some guidance or information about honors level courses with regard to teaching them, and how is an honors level course different from a gifted honors level course, or how is an AP course different from what should be offered as AP for gifted students. What is IB? Maybe I know that curriculum is very strict, so it may be that IB is something we don't address. I don't know. Dual enrollment. There have been a lot of changes lately in the whole dual enrollment situation, and so it might be that dual enrollment isn't necessarily the best option for a gifted student. It may be that a more advanced level course there at the school division is a better option, because a lot of issues have happened with the dual enrollment credit kind of option. And some of our academic year governor schools, which are almost totally dual enrolled courses, although they're just not the same content necessarily as what you might experience in a community college, but they're dual enrolled with the community college, but they're been differentiated for gifted kids. Those courses may move away from dual enrollment, because sometimes it's not advantageous for a student, the way things are set up now, to get more additional dual enrollment hours. But anyway, that's a different discussion, but that could be part of this guidance. Talent development, we could look at providing some guidance on talent development. I have some more integrated components with regard to research for gifted kids, and what that might mean in terms of how you structure that at lower grade levels to incorporate multiple disciplines such as communication, and then some guidance about math pathways, and what does that mean for gifted kids in the early years, but also when you're looking at additional opportunities at the high school, middle school and high school level. And then Felicia, if you got a few things.
I also noted providing some guidance on what rigor really looks like, because I think that varies from division to division and classroom to classroom. And I think if we could also look at what rigor looks like for gifted versus your neurotypical average kid, I think that would be important. And I think it was Melanie brought up providing support for classroom teachers pertaining to differentiated instruction specifically for gifted learners. And how talent development and differentiation services work together. So I had those in addition to what you had written down. And if I missed anything, you all just let me know.
I did see Janin. Did you want to say something? I saw your hand kind of go up.
Thanks, Corey. I wanted to kind of go back to what you said about how you have 17 Black students, that are identified as gifted intellectual for English. Is that right? Was it English or?
No, darling, that's in the whole school.
Okay, so right. I feel like that's important, and I don't think it's unique to you all. And I guess that goes back to talent development, but it's also about mindset, and it's about, like, if we do work on talent development, that's great, but how are we going to educate guidance counselors and reach people like parents? I mean, it's, we have a huge English language learner population. How are we educating those parents who aren't very engaged, with the school system for a myriad of reasons? And so to me, that seems like a huge equity issue. And though I am concerned about the math pathways and rigor in our honors classes, if we aren't getting the right kids in those classes, I'm concerned about that. So that's just, I just wanted to kind of like go back to that. And it seems like a big underlying problem. And I don't know what we as a committee can do about that, but I'm very interested in figuring it out.
Something that I've done with schools I work with, and it may be beneficial for everyone if we look at, I've talked about how the goal of our gifted education program should be equity, providing not only equitable identification, but equitable services once we've identified students who truly are gifted. Maybe we could put together some sort of guidance that describes what equitable identification looks like, who that impacts, and once they're identified, what equitable service looks like, not only through differentiated services, but through talent development, enrichment, extension, acceleration, curriculum compacting. I think that would be something that all school divisions could benefit from, having some type of document that would describe those things.
Melanie, we might want to go back and get the link to the AERA Institute that reviewed different ways that research is suggesting about communication, getting the wider net, casting the wider net for communicating. We looked at that Institute link last spring, and I'm not at my right computer to be able to check that, but I think that would help give a basis for us, because also on that communication, what I've noticed is that there's that layer that I put in the chat about family development centers. During the pandemic, they had connections with families, and in the one that I deal with, they would be more than willing to share and educate and help families. And so if we can give other examples of best practices that have worked at different levels, I think as a committee at the state level, that could be a value add for anyone.
Yeah, I'd be willing, because like we've done all of those things. We've also had intentional conversations with our different communities. There's a lot of cross connection with different services that are offered within the division, moving away from that silo thing. Like we have a lot of my teachers who do some intentional collaboration with the ELL departments at their schools, doing family outreach, looking at the programs that serve some of these more historically excluded groups. For instance, I personally have done, we've integrated this year a professional learning community model that's division wide. And so you just providing information and making sure people are aware. And next semester, we have a community learning program here in Albemarle County. And I think I'm gonna create a webinar just for our families. One of the first things that I did when I began in Albemarle County was we kind of did a tour of the county and communicated to the schools about what talent development means and what does does gifted services means and the rationale. And for families who really perceived the label as something that they needed to possess to have access to things, like just really getting them to understand that the student performance is what we're focused on, not labels being determinate for pathways, because learning and development is not fixed. And so we need to be continuously responsive. It's a very, what we've learned here is that unpacking about 100 years of belief around ability, it just takes some time, because especially if our parents who are in their 30s and 40s or 50s who were used to one model, the special class down the hallway or the I took a test thing. So it's a process. So it just takes some time.
Awesome. Thank you, Melanie. Lisa, you have your hand raised, and then after Lisa, we're gonna do our sharing really quickly, a little speed round as we end up our day together.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Jana, for that comment, because something that we really focused here on in Alexandria is the underrepresentation of our language learners. And we are a language learning type of a school division, in how the process of just having that second language is masking high ability. So until we start just explaining the process to not only parents, but also teachers and everybody who's servicing our students and trying to identify that talent, it's gonna be very difficult to improve that aspect. So I think I do agree that just having those type of resources available for school divisions, especially those school divisions with a large representation of language learners, Spanish speakers, any language learner, it will help a lot with the effort of just improving that area of underrepresentation.
Awesome, good stuff. Thank you, Lisa. So we're gonna do our speed round, and how this goes is we will, if you don't have necessarily anything to share, that is perfectly fine. You can say pass. But if there's something unique that's going on in your area or school division that you would like to share with the committee, you're welcome to do so. I've already shared out the things that I would have shared this morning. So I'm going to go by the order that's on my screen. So Lisa, did you have anything that you'd like to share?
No, I'm fine. I think I just did. Thank you.
Awesome. Melanie, you're good? Okay. Dara? James? Oh, you're muted, sir.
Sorry, I'm so used to being in charge of these where I'm never muted. I don't even know if this is relevant, but I know that with COVID, trying to even get interest for students applying to the governor schools, both Maggie Walker and Appomattox Regional, it has been difficult last year and also this year still. With some schools, we're having virtual meetings and also in persons. And with some of the virtual ones, just getting the word out. Again, that was just something that popped into my head about even trying to get students into some of the governor schools. That's all. Sorry, pass on everything else. I apologize.
Oh, you're perfectly fine. And the cat. Yay. Cheryl, did you have anything to share out?
I'll pass.
Okay. Shelley?
Yeah, we have some new programs that we're running at our high school and then at one of our feeder middle schools that aren't gifted programs, but a large number of our identified gifted students signed up for them. They're these experiential learning programs that are separate from the curriculum that's been established for the rest of the classes in the school. So I'm interested in seeing what the experiences of our identified gifted kids are and how this also impacts them on things like, their math and science choices afterward.
Awesome. Thank you, ma'am. Rebecca?
Hi, I don't have anything. Thank you.
Lori?
Hi. Hi. Yeah. Well, I kind of already talked about our push in with access to Rigor and stuff. But one of the things that we've developed this summer is like a one-pager for all of our teachers in our county to understand what differentiating up means. We have this idea of differentiating is always those scaffolds and supports for those kids who are at risk, and we really wanted to help our teachers and our admin to understand that we meet the needs of advanced learners and develop talents when we see these needs. And so we've looked at 4 core areas, increasing rigor, developing expertise, how to modify the structure or pace, and how to encourage the autonomy of our students and that independence. And so I'm excited that we've launched this one-pager because it's having and fostering conversations with our teachers about that need of our students have, so we don't let our advanced learners kind of off in the wild, so to speak.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Thank you. Good stuff. Wendy?
Just a reminder of the Virginia Gifted Parent Family webinar on October 28th, 7 to 8:30. And you can go on our website, Virginia Association for the Gifted, to register.
Awesome. Thank you. David?
Yeah, 2 quick things from our advanced coursework study that I was mentioning earlier. We have a number of reports that are going to be coming out related to this. I'm throwing a link in the chat in case anybody's interested in taking a look. So we'll have a big report looking at VLDS data from the metropolitan Richmond region. We're going to have a policy analysis coming out, a big student survey of all middle and high school students in our region about how they make decisions to enroll or not enroll in advanced course options. And then we're doing a multiple case study at an elementary, middle, and a high school. We also have some literature reviews in there that might be interesting. We refer to the Young Scholars Program that Lori mentioned earlier as one of the models. And then the other thing that I'll mention, and I'll throw a link in the chat here in just a second, we have our annual stakeholder conference coming up next Friday. And if anybody on this body would like to join, I'll send a link for a complimentary ticket for you to register.
Awesome. Awesome. Good stuff. Thank you. Janin? You are muted. Oh, are you good? Okay. Kim?
No, nothing today. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you. Megan?
Nothing today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave. We just got that link. Felicia?
I want to remind everyone that the Virginia Consortium of Gifted Education Administrators will be providing every couple of months PD sessions. Some will be geared toward division administrators of gifted education, and some will be geared toward teachers. And so information about that will be coming from our chair. Her name is Angela Dietz. And so if you are the division person responsible for gifted ed, you will be receiving emails from Angie, and they will have information about how to register for those professional development sessions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Felicia. Tracy?
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Carla?
I pass. Thank you.
Absolutely. Last but not least, Christine?
I don't have anything at this time. Thanks, Corey. It's a great conversation.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I used to work with Christine. I thought it was you.
Yes. Hello, old friend.
Fred. Okay. Getting back to our agenda, we're at the end here. And I think Felicia, you shared about the consortium. Wendy shared about being gifted. Donna, was there anyone else that needed to kind of recognize?
I don't think so. I think we got everybody that's currently on, and I don't think there's any other groups that.
All right. And in terms of public comment, it says only submitted written comments will be read. Did you have any that have been submitted, Anna?
No.
Okay. Well, looking at our agenda, our next meeting dates will be on Friday, December the 10th, the day before my birthday. So bring your cupcake to the meeting.
Okay.
And then we have February 11th, and last but not least, April 29th, 2022. And with that, my friends, we are adjourned.
I wanted to make one comment though, real quickly.
Yes, ma'am.
I think what we'll do is send the minutes will come out to you, but we may also send out a separate email with some of these topics listed for us to select. It
Yes,
sounds like there's a great need to provide some, maybe, of course it would go to divisions too, but something that would be helpful for teachers, looking at kind of the mindset of what kinds of things to look for identifying students and providing rigor and differentiation. And Lori, your document sounds like a great, thing for us to look at. So maybe if it's public, if you want to send it to us, I can send it out as well.
I'll check with Kirsten, definitely.
Okay. But yeah, we will be getting all this stuff out to you, and I'm hopeful that we can meet in person, and by the time our meeting starts, have some kind of launching point where we say, this is what we're going to focus on. This is what the majority of people have kind of selected, and what tact we take from that will be part of our discussion. And then we'll break into subgroups and do some other things. So I'm hoping it will be in person, and I will, the sooner we get this out and kind of get something nailed down, the more I'll know whether it's worth our while to come and meet in person, or if this is something we want to do virtually. I'm sorry, but I'm not up for 5 hours of a virtual meeting. But, I can handle it in person, but not virtual. And also the DOE provides lunch if we do it in person. So we usually work through lunch, but it's great to be able to talk to your colleagues and meet people in person, especially in the subgroup situation where you have a chance to get to know people a little bit better. So hopefully looking forward to in person next time.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you for your time today. Look forward to seeing you all in December. Have a great day.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Felicia, are you still on? No.
No, she slipped out.
Okay.
I was quick.
All right. And this is live recorded, so I'm going to get off too.